What is Russian Cosmism, and what impact is it having now?
Yeah, so Russian Cosmism is really a kind of core of Russian nationalism. And for those that are interested in learning more about this, there's a good free book by a Russia expert named Marlena Laruelle. It's called Russian Nationalism, Imaginaries, Doctrines, and Political Battlefields by Marlena Laruelle. And the first chapter of her book, because it's this central, is about Russian Cosmism. And Russian Cosmism is really a sort of movement that I would say got its roots over the last 150, 200 years. The sort of canonical person that people point to as the originator of this is a guy named Fedorov.
Not to be confused with the ice hockey player, but yes, continue.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But this idea that there's there's a connection between our position here on Earth and our position in the in space and in the solar system and what have you. It really gets at Russian ideas about science and how they think that science should be in the service of sort of solving problems for humanity. And so one of the key problems that they think that humans have is like the problem of death. A part of Russian Cosmism is really dedicated to the idea that we can resurrect the dead. Now, there's a problem with resurrecting the dead, which is that if you resurrected all the dead and then tried to have them hanging out here on Earth, you would quickly run out of room. So this creates a mandate for colonizing space. So then this creates this whole chain of logic around figuring out how to build rockets to leave the Earth, to colonize space, so that we can resurrect the dead in space. Now, you might think, all right, well, this is pretty crazy, and what the hell does this have to do with anything? Well, the problem is that a lot of these ideas have kind of made their way into the contemporary conversation around artificial intelligence and sort of our ideas about technology and rocketry. So, our token space weirdo, Elon Musk, is going around quoting from a guy named Tsiolkovsky, who was a Russian cosmist who came a bit after Fedorov. And Tsiolkovsky was the guy who worked out the equations for rocketry. And again, to solve this problem of resurrecting the dead. And Tsiolkovsky's quote, on this topic is that, the Earth is like a nursery. It's like a cradle. And that we can't stay, in the cradle forever. We have to go become spacebound and go out and explore this stuff. So all of Musk's rhetoric about, becoming a multiplanetary species is quite parallel to Russian cosmism. And others, have noticed this. I'm certainly not the only one that, has made this observation. And so there's a philosopher by the name of Emil Torres, who's a contemporary writer who has coined a term called TESCREAL, which stands for transhumanism, extropianism, singularitarianism, cosmism, rationalism, effective altruism, and long-termism, which is basically lumping all of these things into a single basket, perhaps somewhat unfairly, but they share a certain amount of common ideological heritage. And we see this kind of TESCREALism, as Emil calls it, manifesting itself in the tech world quite a bit. So people are basically
Yes.
becoming a bit cultish about AI. And if you hear all the stuff about AI risk and the probability of doom coming about from the development of AI, that's where all this stuff kind of comes from. So the fact that there's kind of a direct root between Russian nationalism and some of these tech ideas that seem to be taking hold in a kind of a cultish way, I think is worth noting. And some people will acknowledge those linkages. Others think it's more of a coincidence, or that these things are, just sort of aligned in a surface way. But I think in order to really understand the big picture, you have to be able to kind of look at those things all at once and get a sense of, why Cosmism, for example, is at the root of Russian nationalism. And again, when we think about Russia's motivations, hardly anybody you talk to will start talking about Russian Cosmism as being the core of Russian nationalism. But in fact, one of the leading experts on, Russia has placed Russian Cosmism at the very root of Russian nationalism. So I think it is highly relevant. And again, it's an example of our ignorance of this is an example of how the West fails to understand the Russian mindset.
Thank you for watching this clip. If you want to hear the whole episode, you can do that by going to our channel and then clicking on the Disorder Episodes playlist. And remember to follow. We're also available wherever you listen to your podcast. Please subscribe. Links are in the description to this video. Thank you for watching, my dear mega orderers.